This text is a portion of Chapter 2 of Charles Dickens's original novel of Oliver Twist. If you're interested in reading more of the book, we have a copy in the library, as well as ebook and audiobook versions in our digital collection, which I've linked in this document. The first thing I noticed about this version of the text is that though the please sir interaction between Oliver and Master Bumble appears much the same, the rest of the text is nearly all prose, quite different from the all dialogue of the script we just looked at. You might find some of the vocabulary and phrasing a little more involved than you're used to, but I encourage you to give it a go. If you feel like you need a little bit more help, I've read it aloud in this video right here. So just pause the one you're listening to now and swap right on over. Let's point out a few interesting details of this version. I'll point them out, and it's up to you to highlight and label the techniques yourself. So recreate the format of highlighting that we used on the script. So Dickens, by virtue of his prose style, is able to play with language a little more than the play is able to. For instance, he's able to use exaggeration and irony to point out how hard the boys' lives actually are. He doesn't say, gee, life was hard for these kids, look at what a horrible dinner they're having. Instead, he refers to their bowl of gloppy gruel as a festive composition. I don't know about you, but grey porridge doesn't exactly sound festive. A festive composition sounds like it should be a good thing, but we know for a fact that it's not. This is a wonderful use of irony, or using words that actually mean the opposite of the intended purpose. This form of exaggeration is pushed further when Dickens talks about the children's bowls never wanting washing. One might say this to imply that the food was just so good that they licked their plates clean. But we know the truth of the matter was that the children were starving and needed every tiny scrap of food they could find. We know this not only because of our own knowledge of the context of the time, but also by the author later reinforcing this starvation. He talks of them licking their fingers assiduously or with great concentration. He also uses exaggeration, such as the spoons being as large as the bowls, to imply that they really just weren't getting much out of it. You might ask why Dickens uses so many points of exaggeration. Well, his aim is to use metaphoric language to criticize the conditions of the children who were being exploited every single day. He couldn't just come out and say, listen up everyone, what our society is doing is wrong and we need it to stop. Or, the industrializing of our cities are having a really bad effect, you guys, look at these overworked and starving people. But he could criticize it in other ways. By making caricatures or unrealistic pictures of the upper and lower classes, it allowed him to make his point without alienating or offending the people reading his novels. Punctuation is used in an interesting way throughout this extract. Part of this is due to the changing fashions and formality over time, but let's take a look at the third paragraph. It is full of commas, semicolons, and full stops. It's almost choppy, like a list. Listen to this. The evening arrived. The boys took their places. The master, in his cook's uniform, stationed himself at the copper. His pauper assistants ranged themselves behind him. The gruel was served out, and a long grace was said over the short commons. The gruel disappeared. The boys whispered each other and winked at Oliver, while their neighbours nudged him. Child as he was desperate with hunger and reckless with misery. He rose from the table, and advancing to the master, basin and spoon in hand, said, somewhat alarmed at his own temerity, that is an awful lot of commas, an awful lot of short sentences. Okay? Now, I didn't exactly read that in the most interesting way. What if instead I had said, the evening arrived, the boys took their places, the master in his cook's uniform stationed himself at the copper, his pauper assistants ranged themselves behind him, the gruel was served out, and a long grace was said over the short commons. Okay, well, you can see in that example, it really escalates the story. It builds up the tension. When you read so many short clauses, so many short sentences, one after the other like that, you really get excited because you know something huge is going to happen. And what Oliver is about to do is huge. The last thing we're going to look at is the idea of metaphors. Now, this is a big one in Oliver Twist. Up until now, we've really only looked at small metaphors in class. Things like The classroom was a zoo, or life is a roller coaster. Small metaphors that are contained. It is possible, however, to have what we call an extended metaphor, or a metaphor that goes over several lines, several paragraphs, or even a whole book. When Oliver asks for more, for example, is it possible that he's asking for more than just another bowl of gruel? Is it possible that Oliver himself could be a metaphor for more than just one hungry little boy? Well, here's your chance to do some thinking. As an extension activity, really have a think about this idea. Consider what you know about Oliver Twist, about Victorian London, and about the Industrial Revolution, and ask yourself, what might Oliver Twist himself be a metaphor for?